Happy New Year, happy 2016 everybody, and welcome to the Lost Begotten's fake TV channel of science, where we're going to be doing a fair use commentary on a little test tube discovery channel, half-assish educational news service type report. And, I mean, not saying there's anything creepy about these people or what they think they're doing. They're just kind of status quo, brainwashed, everyday people, and their stuff is kind of used to teach children in many cases, high school children especially these days. So I wanted to do a critical commentary under the 107 blah 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 fair use and play a little bit of this and comment on it for you, because the lack of historical understanding is really going to be the death of a lot of people. Okay, the way to avoid history repeating itself is to understand it, is to know about it. Okay, and knowing a half story plus a cover story at best, which is what we commonly know now, that ain't gonna cut it. Alright, so I'm just gonna take these little issues one by one and you'll see what I mean.
Well, despite the incredibly high modern-day death tolls, wars have actually gotten less and less deadly over time. Early methods of warfare were incredibly brutal and direct. Fighting from trenches or attacking each other on foot caused a huge number of casualties. The first...
Going back before that, now people like to say America bad, civilian casualties, blah blah blah. America is basically the innovator in civilian casualty reduction. The innovator in civilian casualty reduction. In fact, the people that come the closest as far as how much they've done to mitigate civilian casualties, believe it or not, are the Israelis. But that's not what you hear in all the hate the government propaganda bullshit that you get from so many people. I mean, those are the facts.
First World War was one of the last to see trench fighting, and one of the first to use advancing technology like...
There's trenches in Europe right now in East Ukraine. Actual fucking trenches. Okay? Now, what I want to note about this is World War I took place, what was it? Basically during this weird Bolshevik whatever power change plus genocide that nobody knows about fully. You know, the half-truth plus a cover story in Russia, or the Soviet Union, as it was to be known. So, just keep that in mind. That's A. We'll call that.
Tanks. The results were devastating. Around 17 million soldiers and civilians were killed during World War I. Worse yet, World War I occurred during the worst flu epidemic ever, which infected about 500 million people worldwide.
What a coinkydink. You know, it was a nod to my memory that viruses were invented.
Roughly 20 years later, World War II broke out. This was the peak for warfare deaths, and due to its intensity, was the single deadliest conflict in modern history. An estimated 50 to 85 million people died, which at the high end was roughly...
A margin of error of 35 million people? That doesn't sit very well if you're Ukrainian. Or one of the people that wasn't supposed to be where they were. Man. A margin of error of 35 million people. Huh. That's amazing. Because there's a lot of errors in just the historical account of this war.
One death for every 30 people alive on Earth. An estimated 27 million Soviet civilians and soldiers died, many from famine and disease, but many...
Define Soviet.
Others killed by the government. Additionally, the Japanese invasion...
Others killed by the government. Yeah, even on test tube news.
...of China during the war led to 14 million deaths. Soldiers died, many from famine and disease, but many others killed by the government.
Not a lot killed by the Nazis, actually.
Additionally, the Japanese invasion of China during the war...
The Japanese invasion of China. Now, you're picturing in your head, well, Japan's an island, so they must have had a big amphibious force to go and invade China. This is not the case. Japan was under the rule of the Qin dynasty, as was much of the mainland of China before the Soviet, Russian, whatever horde took it over, or took it over. Okay? And I said horde and took it over for the same reason, because the horde used to own that land. Well, they never got to Japan, but the fact of the matter is, Qin dynasty is all one happy family until the communists came along.
Led to 14 million deaths.
So 14 million deaths, and they didn't use boats. They didn't come in there with planes and bomb everything and then land boats and land tanks and invade and advance. They owned they, were still under the control of, or, was still... I wonder if they even called it Japan before this. Okay, I really do. Because it was all kind of one country. And Japan, Imperial Japan, the Japanese emperor, the Qin dynasty emperor of Japan, had still legal claim, or whatever, over large swaths of coastal China, including 2 major cities and the surrounding areas. So don't picture little boats landing. Picture communist revolution spreading through China, people in the middle class being executed, and the Qin dynasty areas counterattacking. Because that's what really happened. And I'm sure it was brutal. I'm sure it got very fucked up from there. Okay? But people want to talk about Western interference. Well, Japan and China would have gotten along, not if it weren't for Western interference, but if it weren't for Northern or Central or Median interference.
This is all on top of the most well-known victims of the Holocaust. Roughly 6 million Jews, 200,000 mentally and physically disabled people, and 200,000 Roma people. The only other...
Slava Ukraina.
Rival to World War II's death toll doesn't necessarily fall into the definition of a war. It may be more accurate to call it a conquest. The spread of the Mongol Empire during the
Hey, look, it's the Soviet Union. Wait. It looks a lot like the Soviet Union, doesn't it? funny how there's this line right here, and if you're wondering why my fingernail's flat like that, that's from bolts. Okay, from trying to get bolts, bolts, trying to unfasten things, just flattened out over the years. I don't know. So yeah, look at the flat fingernail of science. So this line here and this line here, you can consider them somewhat imaginary, okay? And it doesn't take much of a twist to the current interpretation of history to understand what I mean by that. Those are imaginary endings of a territory. See, what happened down here is, okay, by this point, all of this was Islamic. Well, guess what? So was all of this. Okay? But the one place we had contact with them, right here in Anatolia, okay? Turkey. Gobble gobble. Now, it's colored white, right? Well, is that Byzantium? No, no, no. Byzantium had fell at this point, and Christianity was pushed back all the way into Europe. I mean, Vienna was being harassed and seized around this time period, okay? Europe was under siege in this time period. Okay, so we're told that this sultan, who was a sultan right here, okay, the predecessor to the current, or the recent Ottoman sultans, okay? And we're told that this was not going well, okay, but we have no evidence of this. We're told this was not going well, but we have no evidence of that. The fact of the matter is, all of this was completely wiped out of anybody who didn't agree with the horde, okay? And all of this was also Islamic at the time, okay? And this is right before the conquest of Hindustan, in which 20 million Hindus were slaughtered, okay?
15th century covered roughly a fifth of the entire Earth's landmass.
Now, add in those other little places. You go from a fifth to what? 1/3 of this. Okay. And that's an interesting number as far as Nephilim, bad guys, and that kind of thing. But see, over the whole part of the earth, including the United States, it would be what? 1/4 of the earth. Huh. Now we're into Revelation. Conquering and to conquer, ruling with hunger and the sword. Oh yeah, I used to think it was America too. That's before I woke up. When I say I woke up, I don't mean the way I'm trying to wake y'all up. I mean, I woke up to my many past lives. And I remember things that all of you need to know. And that's why I made this channel. If you want to go ahead and bother to check out the previous videos. Okay.
The Mongols, led by Genghis Khan, were able to capture so much territory.
Now, if you've seen any pictures of the men that surrounded Muhammad, looks a little similar, okay? Just want to point that out. Just looks a little bit similar. Alright, moving on.
by completely destroying nearly everyone and everything they came.
And by the way, there's supposed stories of Genghis Khan when he was younger, and he was basically kind of a slave that was made into a soldier by people who were in kind of a mysterious level of control of things. Okay? And it really, as vague as that sounds, what the shit you can find on it is not much better. And it lends to the whole Medianite theory.
In contact with. Estimates of the Mongol death toll reach as high as 40 million, with many regions like China seeing their populations nearly wiped out. By numbers alone, 20th century wars were the bloodiest in history. In just 100 years, 108 million people died from war. Throughout human history, estimates have varied wildly, but some believe that as many as 1 billion people have died in total during wars. Luckily, the nature of warfare has become much more focused and localized.
Thanks to who? USA! USA!
Technology like drones make it considerably easier to minimize collateral damage and advance.
Oh, but Obama drones bad! Benghazi! Obama drones bad, Benghazi.
In medicine make it easier to keep people alive. Although inventions like nuclear weapons may seem like they make modern warfare less safe, in fact,
Sorry, I was shaking my foot.
the opposite is true. Some weapons are completely off limits in a war. To learn which ones those are, check out this video.
Non-detectable fragment weapons produce shrapnel that cannot be detected using an X-ray machine, making it very difficult for...
Okay, so that's all well and good. But what I want to get here is how the expansion of the Soviet Union was a re-expansion of the not Khazarian. Khazarian is a word for it. Okay, not a correct conspiracy theory line of thought, but close, you know, close but no cigar, kinda. You have to go back to the word in the Bible, which is media. Okay? And bear in mind, God created all this when he was a child. God planned all this when he was a child. So think of solutions in innocence. Think of the truth being spoken on the mouth of babes. Media. What do you teach a child that media means? Median. It's the middle. And now it's gone from the middle to news somehow, to the brainwashing force that's destroying Christianity. Media. And if you'd like to see where it connects, see that date right there? Well, when did Jacques de Molay die? You see, there was a general of the Horde that ruled from this area. And he was also called Molay, but they're not supposed to be related. And then, basically, you have a century later, no reason giving for the Mongol Empire's collapse. But you have the extermination of Templars and Johannites. Leading to the founding of the American colonies. I think it's interesting because if you go and you look on the map right here, okay, this is where all the shit that goes down comes from. Okay, this is media. You have Kazakhstan, and here, I mean, over here is Tatarstan, kinda, but it's not marked off. And then right in the middle of it is a place called Kazan, which has its own Kremlin, which is the Muslim Kremlin. Okay? Yeah, the Muslim Kremlin. And it's very interesting. The mosque that looks that the mosque that Putin just built in Moscow, the mosque that Putin just built in Moscow, you know, muskets, Muscovite mosque. Crusaders started getting their ass kicked because the Muslims had gunpowder. Oh, you didn't know that? You didn't? I didn't know that either. Yeah. When I was asleep. But you see, there's no capital of Russia. You can't go and just invade Russia. There is many capitals of Russia. Okay? And please back that up and pause it if I was shaking too much. That mosque in Moscow kind of looks like this mosque that's way back right here, a little further away from Europe. Okay. Moscow is supposed to be right here. Okay. Right there. And Kazan is right here. Okay. And that's where this is. And that's my phone that I used to use for recording videos. And now I'm using a real camera. Yay! Which is why you can actually hear, you know, me talking and mumbling and babbling on about crap. Yeah. So, thanks everybody for watching. I hope you found this informative and stimulating. And please do go look up Jacques de Molay, look up the Templar executions or whatever, and look up the Golden Horde. Look up that little Sultan guy and how he fell. Look up the Qin Dynasty, how that fell. And look up, see if you can find a reason why that line exists right there. Okay? See if you can find a reason. See if it doesn't seem suspicious. Okay. It's kind of like maybe Sunni-Shia divide might be the best reason you could actually give to it. But, see this line right here? There's no reason for that line. Other than snow. Okay? And, well, as far as snow goes, see, this is where Moscow is. I find this interesting. This is where Moscow is, right in the middle of this camera right now. Right now. Okay? Right in the middle. That's where Moscow is. Now, you'd think that from what you hear about World War II, that it was much further north than Germany. That's Poland. Germany's right on the other side of it. Ukraine, Belarus, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Prussia, Poland, and right where the, whatever the hell that is, Germany. Okay, so just north a little bit, right there in the center of the camera, right to Moscow. And over here, that's Kazan. Moscow, right there, center of the camera. Kazan. Alright. And guess what? Over here, right there, not way up here, right there, that is magnetic north. Okay, that's the Ural Mountains. Understand? You know what the Ural Mountains are? That's where all the fucking evil comes from. Alright, it's right up in here. Okay. And the reason why the idea that Russia feels threatened is ridiculous is not only because basically do they have a series of rivers that connect throughout here in the Caspian Sea and everything, and they have submarine docks and fucking underground shit on the coast. Right? They have rivers that connect all throughout this area. This is how the Vikings came to Europe, okay? Was through these rivers that connect right here, okay, and go into the Atlantic Ocean right there. And that's how the Saxonite half-breed fucking Canaanite white man horde came to Europe. Wave after wave after wave. That's why there's not that many blonde people or redheads anymore, you know. That's right. Everybody's just kind of mutts now. Pretty much everybody's mutts now. I mean, that's okay and all, but I prefer a coat of many colors. Anyways. So, let's see, where else was I going with this? The Ural Mountains. Right, basically going from the M down to the left. Right. And what Stalin, we know, did was secretly build a shit ton of tanks and aircraft up there. And then just whooped Hitler's ass after luring him into Moscow, kind of. Spanked him like the little bitch he was. Oh, man. And to me, you know, like, I find people who glorify Hitler to be as nonsensical as the people who dread him. He was just a fucking patsy. He was a pawn, maybe a bishop, you know, like a pawn that was made to think he was a bishop. But at no time was Hitler the real threat. Don't know how lucky you are, boy. Thanks, everybody. Please continue your own research and feel free to try to learn some stuff about actual history and the actual threat that we face. Because the enemy within ain't from around here. And I'm not talking about Obama. He's from Hawaii, that's close enough. Oh, man. Yeah. Anyway. Peace, y'all. Like and subscribe. Oh, thank you very much.